Hi, everyone. We're here today with Pete and Phil, both in the UK. I really am glad that you had a chance to join us today because we're addressing something that's near and dear to my own heart, and that is the topic of pain and the consequences of how we relate to it and what we do as a result when we experience pain. So, what exactly is pain? So, we can have physical pain like this. We often feel pain in a joint or near a joint, not that much in the belly of a muscle. We can have pain in the organs, we can have pain all over the body. How we relate to ourselves has everything to do with how we relate to pain as well. So, with that in mind, I am going to actually ask Pete to come on. Let us know, Pete, your own experience with pain. How would you yourself define pain? I think emotional, mental, and physical pain are all the same source, just they manifest in different places. And what has been your experience with pain, and how do you relate to it? And what are the consequences of how you related to it?
It's been very different over the many years. What came to mind, there's been a lot actually, because I work with my hands I was in the car trade and some building trade. So, but in the car trade, there's grinders and all sorts of welders. What came to mind was a tooth abscess I had. I didn't know I had an abscess, but this was maybe 30 years ago. And I was in agony, honestly. And it's a different kind of pain. However, it was, nearly 10 out of 10, to the point where you could see how people really maybe do some severe things. Knowing what it was now, I probably would have aspired to deal with it myself. I did have an appointment booked, so I had to wait till the next day. I was on painkillers, all sorts of things. This is when I didn't really have any protocols, wasn't too aware of other ways of relieving the pain. I wasn't healthy in terms of my eating. My nervous system was probably up on the 9 to 10 scale in terms of work, business, stress. So I wasn't really doing any nurturing, any tools for myself, to be honest. So to me, that intensifies the story. If our nervous system is more relaxed and we are doing clearing work, cleansing work, to my observation, what I've witnessed is certain situations, teeth problems, cuts, bruises, they are just not as amplified in retrospect of when I've had a very similar experience in the days when I wasn't really aware too much or having any protocols, and my nervous system was full on. To be honest, more in fight or flight. So the abscess was the biggest one. I didn't know I had an abscess, went to the dentist, and the apprentice lady or the assistant was just, okay, open your mouth, and was going to put anesthetic in there, and basically all the gunk from this abscess came out, should I say. So, and she was pretty freaked out as well. So that was, yes, it was very severe pain. Again, I've had circular sores, going maybe a centimeter through my thigh, and many times my index finger, which was interesting, kidney and bladder. So, and the attitude to that is we're going in and out, but interesting into the connections on a symbolic level. So I would say that's one of the most certain pains. I think we compartmentalize and we can cherry pick ones. I had to say to my partner, okay, come on, remind me some. So she reminded me of that tooth story. I've had welding under a vehicle, and you can imagine like molten lava from a volcano. You can get these little blobs of weld that falls down. And I've had that going in my eye, rolling around my eye, and got stuck in my eye. So that was more shocking, bit painful, but more shocking. However, what I truly noticed is the more relaxed you are in your life, the less pain, so-called pain, you feel. So again, the pain tolerance someone may have, I would say, has a lot to do with their how their nervous system is, how regulated their nervous system is. Years later on, from 18 years ago, doing the Jinshin Jitsu, and slowing down saunas, ice baths, bare feet, lots of different protocols that was assisting my system to relax more, to let go, to release, and to come out of the more fight or flight that I didn't even know I was in. Like a lot of people, that state is just a normal thing. So I didn't realize that was abnormal. So from doing a lot of protocols, I realized certain situations would still happen, could still happen, because I was working with my hands, still had teeth stories going on. However, I had the tools to really, say, execute them pretty quick, disperse the blocked energy. So I realized it really eased any stories that were painful before, and it was less painful now. So, and breath work, breathe, breath. Oh, my word. So if you're implementing a lot of them practices which become normal through the day, then everything really, you're out. The world is a reflection of your inner. So if you're more calm inside, then anything that generally
It looks like Pete has frozen up. So, Phil, I'm going to bring you in, and I'm going to just ask you
I
to
think
say,
I'm still on. I think I'm still on.
okay, hold on a second. Hold on, please, because it's not fluid. It's not flowing. I'm just going to bring on Phil. I'm going to come back to you and see if your own transmission is much easier then. Phil, welcome back. Pete just said something which I think was so important. He talked about the fight or flights, and you both have something in common because you are a builder, and he was a builder as well. So, how do you yourself think of pain, and what do you yourself think about the fight or flight response?
Well, yeah, I relate to lots of what Pete's saying with different injuries, and so physical injuries. I've had a few physical injuries, and one of the things that I've really noticed, whether it's an emotional kind of injury or a physical injury, is as my diet's got cleaner and I've got cleaner and I've become more evolved, is that it's much less painful. So, even when you have, I had a head injury back in September. My own fault. I was rushing around one evening and I found myself being caught up in the soup of other people. So I was kind of in their thoughts, not really in my own. And then I got this smack on the head, and it abruptly woke me up into, oh wow, I wasn't in my own field. I wasn't in my awareness. I was in someone else's stuff. And so the other thing I also noticed with that was, I went to the bathroom and I had quite a hole in my head, but how quickly it stopped bleeding. That's something I really noticed, was how calm I was, how you know, initially it bled quite a lot, but very quickly it stopped bleeding. Like what? Because I was expecting there to be a lot, and actually very, very little. So how I relate to pain physically is very different, because number one, it didn't hurt as much, and number two, it didn't bleed anywhere near as much as it used to. And definitely emotionally, you know, it's interesting actually that we're talking about that, because just recently I've had an interaction and it caused real pain in my body. You know, it triggered something, and I was like, oh, this is something really old that I haven't felt for a number of years. It's been hiding that emotional pain. It's when I was young, it's the pain, right, that I've had for ever, really, but I haven't felt it for a lot of years. And when I was young, I used to drink a lot to suppress the pain. I used to drive fast cars to suppress the pain. I used to work hard, all pain relief. So one of the things that I've realized doing the work that I do and in coaching people is, what is our pain relief? What do we use as immediate pain relief? And we can use adrenaline, we can use any number of drugs, really, whether it's adrenaline or alcohol or whatever it is, to try and stop the pain, numb the pain out. Because, you know, actually we don't really have tools. We're not taught tools. We're taught alcohol, painkillers, and adrenaline, and also completely numbing out. So that's where the nervous system comes in. If we're completely numbed out because we've got pain, and for most people it's emotional pain that's the biggest, I think, is the biggest deal of all. So we use lots of tools, shall I say, as pain relief. And actually, to go on with what Pete was saying now, you know, we've got some tools the same and some tools different. So, you know, now I know if I don't do my protocols, like this winter, it's been so wet, and cold in the UK that ironically, I haven't been using the sauna and the cold shower, and I've got ill. And and that's why I wasn't on the show last week and things. And I was like, what am I not doing? That's, you know, what pain relief now am I not doing? It's like, oh, I've slipped on my protocols. I've slipped on my barefoot. I've slipped on not saunaing and not doing the cold showers. And it's like, oh, that's why I'm suffering. So instead of going down the pub and having beer, we go to the sauna, we drink some juice, take some enzymes, whatever, breath work, you know. And again, with Pete, definitely the breathing it's a really simple way of being able to step, especially from an emotional trigger where it's painful in your body. And of course, our mind just wants to blame somebody else, because it's always someone else's fault, right? It's always someone else is always giving us pain. So the breath, breathing in and out, taking control of your breath, and the pain subsides, the blame goes away. And it's really interesting how that suffering, the pain, is diminished almost instantly. Almost instantly.
Yes, it's interesting that you mentioned also you had a hole in your head. What happened with that hole?
What do you mean? How did I cause it, or how did I heal it?
Both.
Well, I'd been at someone's house, and I'd been hanging doors, so I'd been fitting doors in their house, and it was late on a Saturday night. It was about 8 o'clock. I was trying to get it all done before they came home, so I was rushing around, you know, mindlessly rushing around, trying to keep myself safe the best I could. And I was hoovering down the stairs, and I had this new hoover, and I left the attachment arm that you use to hoover I stuck that in the special compartment of the hoover, but I left it 2 bits long. and I had the hoover at the top of the stairs, and I was working down the steps. As you do when you hoover the stairs, you go down and then you take the hoover to the bottom and go up. Well, I just thought, one more step. Well, it was one more step. I was bent over on the step, and you can see in my head here. And the hoover, I'd obviously pulled the hoover down the stairs, and this tube came and literally scalped me. It stuck in my head, ripped a big flap of skin down my head. And I was all on my own. And when it first hit me, I was like, oh, that hurt, but it's all right. And then all my glasses just filled up with blood, and it all started running down my face. So then there's all the fear of, oh, this is actually quite serious. So then it really starts to hurt when you think it's serious and you've really damaged yourself. So then that's what I've said. I went to the bathroom, I looked in the mirror and dabbed it all off and was like, oh, this is not good, but I've got to stop myself from bleeding out all over someone's carpet. So I had my T-shirt. I had a T-shirt on a banister, and I grabbed it and stuck it on my head and just held it there. And very quickly, very, very, very quickly, the blood stopped. You know, within minutes, it had stopped. So that's how I did it. And then I was an hour away from home, and my dad lives just up the road from me. So I phoned up my dad. I said, Dad, I'm gonna be home in about an hour. Are you still gonna be up? And he's like, yeah, pop round and see me. So I've been next door to the house I was working on, and they just got a plaster and kind of sandwiched it over the top. I don't know what on earth they did, but they sandwiched it over the top. And when I got home to my dad, I pulled this plaster off of my head, and my dad went, oh, I think you need to go to the hospital. And he went and got the mirror, held the mirror up for me, and I was like, I won't repeat what I said, but I was like, oh my gosh, that's bad. I said, I think you're right, Dad. I think I need to go to the hospital. And he said, but you're not going to go, are you? And I said, of course I'm not going to go. So I sat and calmly cut these little strips of plaster, and I worked out all the skin and pulled all the hair out of it, and then just literally stitched myself back together with plasters. And then we got a big plaster, and Dad got some raw honey out of the cupboard, and he literally just spooned this raw honey under the plaster, and then we squidged the plaster of raw honey on my head, and I went to bed. Emily, my partner, wasn't with me, so I went to bed with it. And yeah, you know, I was a bit nervous because it was quite a big cut, and I didn't know if I was going to get infected or, you know, what was going to happen. So it was a little bit nerve-wracking. And my dad's like, Dan, it's fine. It will just eat all the debris. It will, any bacteria that's in there, it will sort that all out. It will be fine. And lo and behold, it was fine. I saw a district nurse friend of mine, and she's like, oh, you're really lucky, because, you know, with a flap of skin like that, it nearly always goes necrotic and dies because it doesn't bind. So thank God for my diet and my lifestyle and the honey, because it, as you can see, I didn't lose the skin. I've hardly got a scar. So that's the story of the hole in my head. I wasn't present. I was rushing. I was trying to push my luck, and I got caught up in other energies, and I'm very aware of that. But it did instantly bring me back to myself, bring me back to my present moment, and that was when I realized that I'd got lost.
And were you also had experiencing a headache when you went to bed, and did you sleep the whole night?
Yeah, no headache, no headache. And I don't remember having a bad night, but I was concerned because, you know, I'd done it with a dirty tool. So I was concerned that I might have bacteria in it, and then, you know, then what would I do? So there was an element of concern and a bit of worry for myself. But yeah, no pain and 0 bruising. So there's a miracle.
How long ago was this?
The end of September.
So this was recent, and we didn't even know about it.
Yeah.
So the way you relate to pain is different from most people because, I mean, when someone has a hole in their head and they've, we're going to the father and they put raw honey and they don't really know what they're doing, most people be talking up a storm about it and making a huge display of it, but you didn't. What about you prevented you from doing that and just accepting that you had that hole?
That's just, I've worked really hard at staying out of drama, and really I could see how much effort my soul had put into place to bring me back to the moment. It was all, when people have an accident, they always talk about, oh, well, I never do this and I never do that. And I've never done that before. And it was the same for me. I'd never done any of the steps that it took to get that head injury. I'd never done that. I'd never left the tube of a Hoover in the Hoover. I never, ever have I ever done that in 40 years of building. Never done that. I've never perched the Hoover right at the top of the staircase so it could smash me on the head. I've never done that. So there was all these steps that I could see unconsciously that I put into place to bring myself back into the moment. But also when I had acupuncture for it, because as soon as I'd done it, I phoned my acupuncturist and said, look, something's going on. I've been self-bloodletting and it's not a good practice. I'm sure I need some help. And Pete will probably know, I can't remember what meridian this is here, but it was right on one of my big meridians that had become blocked. And it was like self-medication to unblock the energetic blockage. And, that's what he said I'd done. I'd actually subconsciously been trying to unblock that energy system. So that was quite an interesting one. But I know if I do an injury like that, I know, number one, I'm not present. And number two, there's something locked in my body that my body's trying to let me know. And, and I'm lucky that I've got a brilliant acupuncturist that's like, yep, you're right. You were bloodletting.
Well, that is quite a story. We'll come back to you. I just wanted to speak about Paula Franklin. She's had a comment here, and I don't know what this is, but she said, I'm trying LDN, low dose naltrexone. Does anybody know what this is? Do you know, Phil? Do you know, Pete?
I've never heard of it.
So, Paula, could you explain to us exactly what that is, please? And why are you trying it? Please let us know. So we're going to come back to you, Pete. Pete, could you continue what you were saying before, please? And also, what do you think about Phil's story and how he addressed it?
Yeah, he addressed it amazing. So in the story, I think I might have heard it, but yes, we have shared quite a lot in the past. So we've shared quite a lot of stories. I had a similar one, but more my feeling was not to go into too many stories, because I have a lot of stories. A lot of people have a lot of stories in terms of cuts and bruises, and I could spend 5 minutes talking about a whole story of a cut. But what I, in terms of the metaphysical reasons or the symbology to what I have witnessed over the many years is, if we get our system or we stay more present, so all them situations, dramas, etc., have all manifested from me not being more present. What does that mean, Pete? It's just, I'm sure we've all had an essence of being calm and relaxed. So how can we generally be in that space most of the time? And to me, that's becomes normal eventually. So you can witness as opposed to getting too caught up in dramas, etc. However, that may still happen at times. So when I do certain meditation and clearing in terms of a story that may have happened, I get to most of the time the seed of the issue. And in terms of blocked energy, Phil talked about the meridians, and in terms of stagnant energy in our cellular memory, I would say. So we have this from early childhood, really early on. I mean, it's really interesting how far back we can go. We had someone on the podcast a while ago, and she said something happened at 6 months. So we carry all this in our energy field, in our body. So it's stored in our body. So we can go on in fight or flight and having accidents after accidents after accidents, clumsy, and all that is all me. That was all me, old paradigm, and I suppose if your field has been compromised so much in terms of where we're leaking out here and there, i.e. again from early, more traumatic childhood. I mean, even school's traumatic, it's like, anyway, many issues can happen there, many situations. So what I've noticed, I've revisited so much through these pains, it's just like if I'm just rushing or just neglecting aspects of myself and just very like controlling the stream as opposed to allowing the stream to flow, then bang, wake up call, and I was really good at repressing. I was really good at holding everything together, and I might dip in and out of it at the moment, not at the moment, but in terms of festivals. However, it wasn't 24/7, and with the festivals and sharing the food and sharing awareness, and so that was really felt much more authentic as opposed to what I was doing in the past. So there's a big emotional connection to it. To me, it wouldn't happen if we were more present, more connected. As Phil mentioned, he got caught up in someone else's energy field. However, we try not to contradict ourselves in terms of it is all us. We just wasn't present. We need to be accountable. And thank you for that other person or them other people reflecting that I was getting distracted or I was unpresent. So, the pain thing is really interesting. I think the more you work with it and have some protocols, you can really make it really less painful. And it's not shutting off. Some people think, detached or you're shutting off from the pain. I think it is just really breathe, relax, and I've aspired to share with my children and friends, and took many people through breath work and releasing so much pain, certain situations where the hands are locking up and they don't even know they're locking up, and the whole body's holding on and taking people through the process to release that. So there's a lot of pain stored in our bodies. We have so much pain. And, with that running in our field, then we attract so much more stories, so much more drama. So it's really wise, really, for people to kind of start looking after themselves, in whatever way they can, and some people can think that is ridiculous. I would have thought that was ridiculous potentially 20 years ago, because I got to pay the bills, I got to do this, and we create situations. I can look back and think, well, if I could have just done that, I could have done 4 different things, but in my mind at the time, I believed that was the way to be, that was the only way. However, it was ultimately a running away from myself, so becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy of a story. So a lot of us are running away from ourselves. A lot of us don't even know self. A lot of us won't even know presence. And hands up, that was me many years ago. Over the last 18 years, it's brought more of that presence, and less drama, less fight or flight, into just being, more zero, more witness, as opposed to caught up in the identity and projections of what is all around. Ultimately, all childhood programming, society, films, movies, peer pressure, schools. So, it's quite a minefield to get through. So the pain is an interesting one. These days, something may happen. I breathe, I calm my body down, slow my heart rate down, and use different tools, especially if I have a cut. Iodine, I always put in it, even though it's very painful. And any cut, etc., it does heal relatively easy, especially if it's on my hands and it doesn't get wet, it heals relatively easy. And then, the food is a big part of that, as Phil mentioned. So, the pain's an interesting topic. I have experienced, let's just say on the emotional level, I was around 28, and it was the first time I understood the potential of heartbreak. Now, when I say that, to me, it's a situation has gave you that experience to feel your heart that already is broken. So there wouldn't be no blame, So, however, most of us get caught up in she broke my heart, he broke my heart. And ultimately, it's all opportunities to look at. So now, if I kept on blaming, I would never get past the deeper meaning or the symbology of the broken heart. Having tools, protocols, modalities, which I share with people, showing with people, you can go into that pain, and generally, boom, you might, different things for different people, take them back to the age of 3, and then such a traumatic situation had happened, or in lungs. And, this is why we have stories, tumors, as far as I'm concerned, manifesting in different areas, So I've had many experiences like that, many, and venturing onto the raw vegan food, I'm going to call it live it, not diet, from 18 years ago. I would have cravings, and I had my Jin Shinjitsu. I would do that and other tools. And now with these cravings, it happened for years and years. I would go into kind of more meditation, and then I would get the association to that craving, and generally always a trauma. So what are we doing? So these foods that I'm craving, they're like sedatives, so they're different medication, especially with the foods, most foods I was eating back then, full of sugar, full of wheat, full of salt. So they're like a bomb we're putting in our body to kind of numb the pain, So I witnessed that loads. And then people say, how do you just sustain the raw food, Peter? How do you just sustain it? And I'm like, well, this is what I experienced. It's like giving up smoking. Why are we smoking? Giving up drinking. Why are we drinking? So it's a different form of addiction. So normalized. However, so that is what I witnessed. And now, of course, do lots of cleansing and just eat more whole living foods, really. And so that's going to stabilize my body. That's one thing I don't even have to think about. I'm not putting foods into my body that's compromising it. So my body's not just doing up and down, up and down, up and down, and people don't realize. So I will leave it there for the moment, I suppose.
So earlier you mentioned that you had an abscess, but you did not in your mouth. But you did not know you had an abscess. What did you mean by that? Because I understand abscesses are really, really strong pain.
Well, I was just pretty naive, to be honest. I just imagine just having a toothache, just thought it was agony toothache. I didn't really know about abscesses at that time. So, I've just gone to the dentist with this, excruciating pain. Some painkillers worked for the first hour or two, and then they just was not working. So in my ignorance, I just went having a serious toothache. But when the lady put the injection in, realized it was all swollen up. There was another instance. This was about 7 years ago. Again, naive about, or compartmentalized, as some do. I did, in terms of a story. And I had a throat issue come up. I used to have throat issues many, many years ago. All of a sudden, my glands come up, and I'm just witnessing. So this is where the witness comes in more. And some people could say, whether it's irresponsible or whatever, but I'm accountable for what I do for my body and listening to myself. And that's been my learning in terms of getting a stronger intuition, I would say. We may get it wrong sometimes. So all of a sudden it swells up, my whole throat swells up, and then, people around me are panicking, and I'm like, okay. And then I'm thinking, well, if the other side swells, then I'd probably go to the hospital. So I couldn't put any liquids in or anything, and I'm just couldn't hardly talk. Now, I would normally get alarm bells, and I was not getting no alarm bells. So I saw it through. So it went on for 7 days. So I realized that was my first potential dry fast. And we had an event on as well. I had my nephew there, and from other people, they were supporting the Saturday event we had. And I had my daughter down as well. So they was looking after my daughter. I didn't actually make the event because of this abscess. So on the last day, a friend come round, a lovely person called Guy. We went to the beach. I said, look, let's go to the beach. And I just did a cold dip, and then came back and sat in the sun. And then all of a sudden, just all this stuff come out. And it was pretty, horrified. Well, I was horrified, and it was quite a stench. So I realized again I had a massive big abscess. And then people say, oh, you could have burst and got in your bloodstream and you could have died. And potentially maybe that could have been the case. However, I'm here, it didn't. And so grateful I did it, because I trusted an intuition, and that has only got stronger, and it just feels like it's with me most of the time now. However, sometimes we don't go past the fear, false evidence appearing real. And, was that reckless? Who really knows? We tend to hand ourselves over too much to the, doctor, pharmaceutical. I'm not saying not to do that. However, research a little bit more, think about home remedies. Back then, I didn't have any really remedies. I was doing my Jin Shin Jiatsu. What I know now is wouldn't even got that far. I would have used many things, whether it's oregano, clove, and would have dry fasted. But I was heavy on the cashews, heavy on the dates, heavy on the bananas. So I'm thinking I shouldn't be getting this raw food, but cashews, dates, bananas, and especially when they're more been sitting around for a while, it's not technically living food. So I wasn't very living, I tell, back then, even though I was classed as a raw vegan. So, that was an amazing experience, actually, in terms of trusting. So that was an epic experience, and I potentially probably lost a stone. So there's a lot about pain. The biggest thing I have noticed is, go from a metaphysical point of view. I work with the astrology as well, and you get an overall picture of what is going on. And then if you work with your dream state and really have tools to go deeper, whether it's do more meditation, breath work, you get to see this. Generally, what will present itself is the seed of a potential why this keeps happening. Like the repetition of certain relationships. Why does this keep happening? They're beautiful opportunities, to go deeper. Not like this isn't ever going to happen to me. It's just like, well, maybe we need to soften and go in and see what is truly going on, rather than becoming a bit too bitter and twisted, And then, what happens after that, our kids who turn out bitter and twisted, and it goes on and on and on. So someone's got to break that nonsense.
So you mentioned that you went with the abscess, you went to the beach, your friend took you to the beach, you went into the cold water, you plunged, and then you came out and you sat in the sun. And the abscess itself on its own then just opened up and poured out of you. So that was instinct. You went according to instinct, and not any reasonable person would have told you yes to go see a dentist or go to the hospital. So I'm going to read you a quote by A.C. Benson. I believe in instinct, not reason. When reason is right, 9 times out of 10, it is impotent. And when it prevails, 9 times out of 10, it is wrong. So if you had gone to an emergency room or to a place of that would have treated you from a even a holistic point of view, that would not have been in keeping with your instinct. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely not the hospital. You know, I mean, and no, it wouldn't have been in keeping with my instinct. I believe, you know, a lot. It's like we need to empower ourselves, educate ourselves, have some tools, have some awareness.
And that's important, the instinct. I'm focusing today on the instinct because
That's okay.
you brought up at the very beginning, and I think Phil did too, and I was really glad you both did, that about the fight or flight instinct when it comes to pain. We're going to address that in a moment again, but I want to go back to instinct because as I'm going to put up another quote, this time from Lord Byron, which said, there is
Things like that of the heart.
that you actually just went to your instinct and you allowed your instinct to tell you what to do. I mean, Phil didn't die. He's perfectly fine. You didn't. In fact, you got rid of the actual problem. And so Lord Byron, when he said this, it's really important to think about it. There is no instinct like that of the heart. So you really went with the heart energy over the pain energy. And you didn't freak out on that. So there was no fight or flight instinct happening. So let's now discuss the fight or flight response. And I'm glad to say we are being joined by Herb, who has just come out of a pain cycle. You got the pun, cycle, because he's a cyclist. He just come out of a pain cycle and is back on his bicycle. So Herb, I see you made it either away from the airport or out of that sandstorm, or you're back in the UK. Welcome back.
Thank you. Yes, it's a very long story. Yes, yes, back on the bike. I really appreciate the pun as well. Very clever.
Thank you, thank you. Now tell us about your own recent experiences with pain, and did you find yourself actually being drawn to the fight or flight response, or did you find yourself being drawn to your instinct, and was that different from the fight or flight response?
Well, initially, when I explained, when the impact first happened, there was no fight or flight. I immediately felt compassion for those that hit me. So that was coming from my heart center, I
So
suppose.
I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you. Listening do not know what happened. So could you go over the entire thing?
Yeah, so I was out on the bike ride, and I was flying down a hill, and a car from the other side of the road come towards me and just smashed into me, just knocked me completely off my bike. It was a big impact, and yeah, I was in a lot of pain, and I couldn't ride my bike for months. So I needed a lot of healing, a lot of repair, a lot of physio. Yeah, and from that incident, I connected with the driver that hurt me, and it was a beautiful way how things were resolved between us. So it was very amicable, very calming. It's quite beautiful, really, looking back on that. So I'm very grateful for that experience in hindsight. But what I did notice though, after that, though that moment I was at peace and ease with that, there was some kind of struggle after that, and frustration can lead to that fight and flight. But one of the biggest things that I found that was supportive and really nourishing is having gratitude. If we can have gratitude for where we are and what we've had, despite the pain and the suffering and the incidents we have, we're going to be invoking more positive energy. Because if we get caught up on negatives and the downside, what are we putting out there? You know, we're going to be stuck. We're not going to be moving forward. And the biggest thing that I was grateful for is having loved ones close by to me, those that could love me and support me in the ways that they could, that could show up for me and be there for me in the simplest of things. And I was so grateful for that. And I'm aware that there's many of us out there that don't have that. They're completely isolated and alone. So that helped me immensely in having gratitude first and foremost.
And can you also think about the fight or flight response that ever came in at any point? And was any fear, like of never getting back on the bike again, or being...
No, I was very much relaxed about it because I had experience in the past. There was a pivotal moment in my life many years ago, which led me on this massive inner journey that transformed my life from a bad incident where I couldn't ride my bike. That led me on the path of being fruitarian, meditation, yoga, breath work, being in alignment. It's a beautiful time. Is when I really blossomed in life. So I had that experience. So I was quite relaxed and chill about everything. That I thought I would get back on my bike. I just surrendered to that and relaxed into that.
And what do you think of the fact that most of us are taught the fight or flight response when it comes to pain? You either fight it or you flee from it. And at the beginning, Pete said something that really woke me up. He said that in response to pain, normally the response would be for alcohol. I had no idea that alcohol was used for pain. I didn't know that.
Yeah, just distractions and numbing ourselves. That is the way, and that is what I have done in the past. And if we're not aware, those old habits and patterns can creep up back on us. So I think a fight is kind of a good thing because it can get you moving. I think there's a balance between the two. I think you've got to go in the pain, you've got to sit with the pain, accept the pain, feel it to come out of it.
Absolutely. But how does one do that if they don't know how to do that? My question also to all three of you is...
It comes down to awareness, isn't it?
And great.
To awareness and how can they become aware?
So then my question to you, all three of you, is, can we practice awareness while feeling exhausted,
Absolutely.
tired, and depleted?
Every day, every moment, we can practice awareness.
And can we practice awareness while feeling exhausted, depleted, and dehydrated?
Yes, absolutely. We can witness those feelings and not become identified with those feelings. Many times we can just unconsciously identify with that pain and suffering and believe that is us, that is all there is. But there's a witness behind that.
Yeah, and the identity is the problem, that we identify with it. I hear people talking about my headache, my migraine, my toothache, not the toothache that I'm experiencing, but they've claimed it, and it becomes
a mantra. Yeah, it becomes a mantra, doesn't it?
Constantly I hear this. My cramps, I'm experiencing. They actually claim it. It's almost like it's become their logo, their brand, and their personal brand. And
they got their own T-shirt.
Yes. So I'm going to actually ask three of you to comment on this. So when I was studying with Thich Nhat Hanh, we always sat on the floor with him, because as one does when one studies the Buddha, when it's on the floor, as close to the earth as possible. And I remember him saying something that really got my attention to the point where I didn't hear anything he said afterwards. And it stayed with me. And he said, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. So it was like you, Phil, you had a hole in your head, you had the pain, but you didn't suffer from it. You just went on and did what you thought was okay. Can you comment on that? I want all three of you to comment on that phrase, pain is inevitable. In the human life, in the realm of living our lives, we will experience pain. And we have a comment here. I just want to bring this comment up. Michael Fujimura. Hi, Michael. Really insightful discussion. Thanks, Michael. And I want you to think about what is it about that exact prognosis. Pain is inevitable because you're humans and we're here in the physical realm, a dense planet. We're going to experience pain. Suffering is inevitable. What I understood from it then, and I've always done after that with him, is that pain, we're going to subject it to pain, whether it's emotional pain, mental anguish, whether it's physical pain. But what we do with it is what's important. How we respond to it is what's important. And most of us, especially in the so-called Western societies, are taught to use it to suffer. It's a suffering tool. It's a tool to get suffering, to indulge yourself in suffering. I think suffering is an indulgence. So I'm going to come back to you first, Phil. What do you think of that phrase? How do you respond to it?
Yeah, I think pain is inevitable, whether it's, pain of the heart, physical pain, spiritual pain, emotional pain. I think it is inevitable, and it's therefore how we deal with it. And I think you asked a question just now about how do we do that when we're dehydrated or when we're tired. And it's actually much harder. It's much harder when you're dehydrated, tired, you're on a bad diet, you're overloaded and underprepared. And it's so much more difficult to be the observer. It's so much more difficult to be calm, to not be reactive. So I think it's really important to get those tools in place, to get hydrated, to get well rested, and to breathe. Breathing's free. And actually, it really does reset us really faster than anything else. Faster than anything else, it resets us. So it's going in the toolbox of the tools that you have. So if you're dehydrated, drink some fluid, drink some herbal tea, eat some fruit, which is the best thing ever, and see what tools you've got available so you can actually bring calmness to your life.
Thank you for that. I'm coming to you, Pete, for the same question, same comment.
That's great, really. It's how we've been taught to perceive pain. Could say it's been weaponized, been marketed, and maybe it's a very Western kind of conditioning. Even though what you want about Pete, everyone feels pain. Well, some people could approach it from a much different perspective. We could bring in the Shalom monks, for instance. So I think it's very wise to remember we've all been in that pain, all come from that to get to where we are now. And that's the beautiful thing for me, being more present. I don't it's not like looking down on anyone or anything like that. I'd be aware of how crippled my body, my energy field was many years ago. So I think that's a beautiful topic. I've heard noises when my son was 4 months, and I could not work out, thinking the beams are cracking in the house, and for days I could not work it out. And then in the end, it was his body, his bones cracking, growing. So what I realize is we've all come, majority of us have come down the canal, should I say? That's the right word, not Anyway, it's all come, some been cesarean, etc. But we've all come into a certain this life and grown, and bones growing, and so if we analyze that and put our thoughts on that, which we do, that's how the program comes in. We would be seeing the pain, interpreting that as pain, where it's just a natural thing. So if we worked on getting back to like that is just a natural part of life. So I think it's a beautiful saying, and then I think if we realize it is a program, and we can shift that program, but have the tools, have the awareness, look for so many modalities, well, as you can. However, the classic one is to, how am I feeling? How is my nervous system? And you may think you are. How is the reality around you? In like the same wherever you go, you are there. Is there drama everywhere you go? Well, then maybe we need to look at ourselves a little bit. So yes, I recognize that. Yeah, I still can have a moan. However, I'm more the witness. And it's just like, as Phil has mentioned and Herb has mentioned, we can witness more because we have more tools, and we're aspiring to be accountable. Not making us any better. It's just like me, just fed up with the pain, that pain, So it's like, how do I shift that, Fed up with being so crippled, fed up with, just the treadmill, like running the gauntlet, if I look back. But when you're in it, you don't see it. When you come out of it, when you come out of it, it's just like, oh my gosh, what I was in. So we get lost.
I agree with that, Pete. When we're in it, we don't see it. I just want to bring in Herb here because we have 1 more minute only to finish up here. Herb, ask that same phrase, please.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful phrase. It's one I learned through cycling, through a fellow cyclist, which galvanized me to push myself in cycling, and the rewards were amazing. There's also another saying, no pain, no gain. There's so much treasure to come out of it if we transform that into something else. And yeah, I've learned a lot of wisdom to come from being on a bike, being a cyclist. What Phil mentioned, is so important to be hydrated, to eat fruit, to be nourished, and to breathe. When you're in these stressful situations, if you're climbing up a hill, racing on the bike, that can be any scenario in life. If you can remain centered and calm, breathe and drink water, and push through and persevere, you come out the other side of it much stronger, and you benefit a great deal.
Thank you. So pain, therefore, then, is necessary.
Yes.
Suffering is not.
It's optional.
It's optional, exactly.
Yeah.
Wonderful words of Thich Nhat Hanh. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. I'm so glad you were all here. And I think this is a topic that really needs to be explored in more detail. So we might actually continue with it next week. It's actually my favorite topic. So thank you all, everyone. Please share this. You have no idea who might be voluntarily suffering without knowing it and not realizing that they're actually adding to the pain, so that you might actually help by sharing it. Thanks for joining us. Bye, everyone.